Good morning, everybody. Welcome to office hours for, where are we? April? April. Even though it was chilly last night. This week, we're going to be talking about digitization and media as related to the database, and also just some good practices as well. Um, We'll go over some of how to attach things, but I want to go over a lot of the basics first. Hoping at some point this year to do a digitization workshop just overall for league members. We did one quite a few years ago, but I think as people change staff, volunteers, and everything, it's not a bad idea to re-up this for everybody every once in a while as well. So as you know, uh, Connecticut Collections, the collective access platform, we can add lots of media images to our records. Um, it's pretty wide ranging and pretty forgivable. So you can add all kinds of different file types, uh, size files, all of that. Mentioning size files, keep in mind in general, everybody is allowed to start off 250 gigabytes of space on this on our collective access server. Um, we are coming up with a way of letting people expand that if they need to, especially if you have like a lot of video files, things like that. Um, Depends on what file types you're using a lot of the time. If you are um, using really high res, different types of files versus lower res, just reference images, uh, all depends what you're using. We do ask if you're uploading any types of like tons of video files at any point in time, just give us a heads up so that we know to warn tech about it so they don't suddenly say the server's out of space. What happened? We just want to keep an eye on that kind of thing. Because we can't access the size file directly to see what everybody's using. We have to go through Seth at ReallyGig to have him take a look at the server and let us know where we are with that. We just upgraded the server a year or two ago, so we should be good for a little while. But like I said, let us know if you're putting up like huge video files or something, because I know a lot of folks are digitizing oral histories and home movies and that kind of thing. Let me do a word about image file types first. Um, there's a lot of good resources out there. There's a lot of different things you can look at. I went kind of for a little bit more friendly graphic for some of this. Um, and just for a base reference, you can get more into this a little bit more. Most commonly, folks use JPEGs. JPEGs, as you can see up here, are medium quality web images. You can use them on the web. You can print them. You can use them from other stuff. They're pretty universal. That's what most people's cameras take. Um, your phones can take JPEGs. iPhones a few years ago went to changing everybody over to HEIC files, which do work on the system. However, they're kind of difficult to deal with outside of your phone and outside of like our system, just popping it in there. I did set my phone ages ago to default to JPEGs. It's much easier to deal with. Um, because if you need to save it or use it somewhere else, a lot of programs won't recognize the HEIC. Um, and trying to convert it is kind of a pain. So I did change my phone back. It takes up a little bit more space, I believe, than their files, but it's much easier on my day-to-day base work. Um, so JPEGs are pretty much the most common. For actual archival digitization, photography or scanning, we do recommend TIFF files. TIFF images are lossless images. That means when they're saved, the computer doesn't try to compress them down to save space. It keeps them at like the original size. As an example, I've got JPEG are lossy files. So every time they're saved, the computer kind of tries to shrink it down to make it take up less room. I do have a video. It's not super um, quick to see how it happens, but this is a video from the state library of a sped up video of saving a JPEG over and over and over to see how it kind of loses its image quality as time goes on. And you can kind of see it, especially up here, where you're losing some of the detail, some of the color, things like that. Um, so as a preservation image, we don't recommend JPEGs necessarily. We recommend the TIFFs. Um, that being said, not everybody has the capacity or the time or the wherewithal to be able to, or space to be able to save high resolution TIFF files all the time, especially if you're just taking a snapshot of your coffee mug in your collection. I'm going to get to that a little bit later too. So we do recommend for preservation purposes to go with the TIFF files here. And you can do that. Most scanners will do that. Your phones will not do that. Cameras will do that. Regular digital cameras should do that. Another word about one of the other file options on digital cameras is RAW, R-A-W. Those are the most lossless original files there are. The reason that TIFF became more of a standard than RAW was because when RAW was first coming out, when digital cameras were first coming out, each digital camera company had their own proprietary version of that RAW file. So if you needed to get into a Canon camera's RAW file, you needed Canon software. To get into my, the name just went out of my head. One of the other like a Kodak camera, you needed their software to be able to get into it. To get into a Nikon, you need Nikon's specific software to open that RAW file. Nowadays, that has become more generic, and you are able to get into those with like Photoshop and things like that for the most part. But that's just one of the reasons that TIFF became like the standard for preservation instead of that raw file. Think of the raw file as like a negative, like a digital negative. You can do a lot to change it around from the base original photo. Um, just quick printing or download, web downloads down here, PDF. Make sure that everybody's, oops, I'm keeping an eye on people joining. Um, okay, I'll keep an eye out for you, Joanne, make sure you're on us both. Um, so if you're doing preservation work, like I said, TIFF is the best. If you're doing printing or web downloads, things like that, PDF is great for documents and archival papers. The one thing with the PDF is kind of in that proprietary software thing, although it seems to be more, I didn't get a chance to read up on like the latest thoughts on all this. Um, PDF was originally owned by Adobe, so that was making it proprietary, and you had to download the software to be able to read it. I think it's a little bit more universal now, but like I said, I didn't get a chance to read up on that, so feel free to read up on that yourselves if you want to double check on stuff, because PDFs in general will take up a lot less file space than TIFFs. The good and bad about the TIFFs are great for the lossless part, and they do take up a lot of space. So if you're like if you're saving stuff to your own files or your servers or everything, they're going to take up space really quickly. They're going to take up a lot of space on the Connecticut collection server pretty quickly, but they will be preservation copies. We do recommend, and I'll try to remember to say this a couple times, we do recommend keeping your own archival copies yourselves somewhere. Although we are backed up 3 times, I think, right now, as to what is saved up onto our servers. We are not a preservation system. So it'll be there, but don't send the picture to the database and go, oh, now I can delete that other one that I took. We don't need it on our server anymore because we have it over here. Keep a copy for yourselves. Sometimes it's just easier to access them. It's easier to see them. They can take up room. Sometimes you might want to get an external hard drive, back it up, but just backup, backup, backup is always my mantra with all of this. So we do back up the system. If something goes wonky, we can pull it off one of the backups, but it's good to have it yourself as well. Um, the We are still working on our preservation connection to the Connecticut Digital Archive. This was our goal, was to make the Connecticut Digital Archive our preservation tool because they are going in and checking these files and have automated systems set up to see if there's any errors, anything showing up that somehow an image might have gotten degraded or messed up somehow that it's not readable anymore. Which is why I say we don't count us as your backup because we do not do that. We do not go in and maintain all the images. We just have the images there. We don't run checks on them to make sure there's nothing going on with them. CTDA has been working really hard the last 2 or 3 years to update their systems. So because it was such a massive, massive upgrade, they're still kind of working out a lot of the bugs and a lot of the updating. And we have our connector like ready to go, and we just haven't been able to get it in place yet and get it working on a consistent basis with them yet. So I'm hoping this year, keep your fingers crossed. Um, so they would be a great preservation, but again, I would still keep a copy for yourselves somewhere. Um, Let me see. Web quality. PNGs or high quality web images, you can attach them to your database to be able to share on the public portal if you want to do that. It's fine. It's not one of my go-to ones because that's not like a preservation copy one. Sometimes I'll use them for that, but it's not, you know, my standard one that I use. Little background. I've been working on digital projects with collections, mostly starting with photographs, then moving over to objects since about 2000. I worked as a volunteer with our graphics department at the Connecticut Historical Society when we were first joining a Connecticut I don't know, five, six group at that point, digitization website. It was Connecticut's History Online. It's now been kind of absorbed into the Connecticut Digital Archive. But seeing the changes and everything since then until now has been amazing. And just seeing where we were is just super interesting. So I've been working with this stuff for quite a while. Um, Back then when we were digitizing collections, just to give you a throwback, we were using a professional photographer to come in to each institution using a 35 millimeter film camera producing slides. Um, and then those slides were scanned in, and those were the digital images that we used. Um, and to show you how quickly technology changes as well, those digital scans that they originally did were done onto Kodak gold disc. I've even forgotten the name of the format that they used. Um, those went the way of the dodo about 10, 15 years ago, probably only 10 years after this project started. Um, at one point, I was using an old version of Photoshop on an old computer at my museum to pull all the images off to make sure I got the highest quality images that we had scanned off of that. Um, so those do exist, they were saved, but you don't want to have to do that all the time. Um, the web formats or the file formats are a little bit more stable now, like with the TIFF and the JPEGs and the PDFs. But it's always something to kind of think about. Um, Let me see. These are the file types. So I want to go into the JPEG thing. If you want to, let me go to this first. Let me zip down here. Thinking about digitizing your collections, it sounds like a great idea. It is a great idea because having your spreadsheet view of your collections is great and you can see the fields that you want, but sometimes it's just easier to look at the pictures and be like, I need this one thing from this one exhibit. I can't remember. Oh, it was this one, the woman with the parrots outside. Okay, great. Sometimes it's just easier to see what you're looking for, and it just gives you some really good reference to the stuff that's in your collection. I know we have a couple pocket watches. Let me look at them side by side without having to get up and look in the back. I could have this one really quick too. This is not in order because I was just throwing these slides from other presentations this morning. So forgive me. So it's okay to have placeholders in your collections, in your records. This is off the New York Historical site. Uh, and you can see where they've got a couple different images in here for theirs. They've got this little guy. You can see this. It's pretty good. They've got this image, which is a lot clearer. They've left both of them up, but this is clearly like a quick, probably a pretty good setup. But it's definitely the newer one's a little bit better. You can definitely tell a lot about the object from there. Um, Whatever images you have are good, just to give you a reference sometimes. I went to, when I got to Fairfield Museum in 2015, 2016, we were just switching over to Collective Access. We were one of the pilot groups. And I was digging through all the servers, all the information to see what I had available to me for collections knowledge. There was a lot of digital images kicking around. They had a really interesting way of organizing them. They weren't organized poorly, just something we don't need to do anymore because they had a thumbnail folder, a medium folder, and like a master file folder. Um, and I started going through and looking at them and with the goal of attaching them to the records. Um, and I'll say this all the time. I use a lot of these slides and a lot of these examples all the time just because they're really good. So if you've watched me do some of this before, you're familiar with some of this stuff. One of these things, like I have a lot of fans for some reason. Um, Adding this, oh, feather fan, awesome. Found a little image of it, attached it to the record, and then I don't think I looked at it full size before I attached it. I just put it on because it was there. When you blow it up, it looks like this. It's not great. It looks much better in the record in the tiny little thumbnail, to the point that you can actually almost read the number in the tiny little thumbnail when you're looking at it on the system. But when you blow it up, the number's all gone wonky. You can kind of guess. You can't really see any detail. But here I can at least see what it looks like. It's come in useful for a bunch of things over the years that I've found and attached to records. The back up a little bit again. Get order, sorry. Um, it's a question of if you're thinking of putting collections online as well, kind of like that purple fan. Do I need pictures before I come online? I need to. You can put the records up. Sometimes it's useful for somebody to see that you have like 30 quilts, and they can get in touch with you if they want to see images of it or make an appointment or something. But it is really cool to be able to see the stuff, even just a quick blast of getting an idea of what it looks like. Um, this was a New York historical example here. I love looking at New York Historical Society's images because they're so close to Connecticut, especially where I am in Fairfield, that there's a lot of really similar things. I can find good information from stuff that they've cataloged, um, as well as like what we have. So this is some of the images from Connecticut collections, just from the main portal. You can see all kinds of things from different institutions here. Um, Talking about that quick snapshot for reference versus a professional setup, not many of us have the money for or time or staff to do a professional setup. Uh, I've been parts of them at my last museum because we had gotten grants specifically to do that and digitize, and it was awesome. And now Connecticut Historical has like great professional images that they can have forever, and they don't need to go back and look at this stuff. Um, Not everybody, like I said, is able to do that. So, but you look at all this range of pictures, these will all help you get an idea of what the image looks like. This is a professional shot from the Barnum Museum. This is an old picture that I took at Connecticut Historical, and this is a picture from Fairfield. It's okay that you don't have money for professional. This was a really simple setup at Connecticut Historical. It was pretty bored. I did some photoshopping it to get rid of the number that was in bright red paint on the side of it. But I did leave that in the original record so you can see it. It actually looks like that. This one, this eel trap on the end, is on top of a ladder. I was standing on another ladder, shooting over at it from wherever I was. Um, but you can see what it looks like. And actually, this is a shot from my phone probably 8 or 9 years ago. And it's pretty detailed. You can zoom in pretty well and see what it is. Uh, so this one, and then that fan. That fan, I don't have this public access on the web because this image is just so sketchy. It really isn't going to do people a lot of good to see that it's there. Um, but in general, having the ability to look at your collection and get a gist of what something is really useful. Um, I do note in my records, as I'm putting reference pictures in that I've done with my phone, that it is a reference copy. It's a snapshot for reference copy, not to be used for duplication, for reproduction, that kind of thing. But it's come in very handy when I've been working at offsite and have gone into boxes of costumes that I've never seen and I know are not on the database that I can take a snapshot and now I can go into my system and I can see kind of what this dress looks like. Or if somebody's looking for something, I can find it. Um, being able to visually scan pictures is great. You're not really going to be able to do that with manuscripts when you have it in there. We do have searching. I'm going to say the wrong letters, so I'm not going to say it until I know it's in my head. Um, that'll search text. So if you've got text in a file, it'll search through that on the system. When you look for it, it does not do handwriting. So just know that going in, if you need to reference anything in a handwritten document that you scanned in here, you are going to need to put that in the catalog record so the records are findable. You should do that anyway. It's good practice with any of the things you digitize to be able to do that. Um, this is the thing about making sure you're cataloging along with your digitizing. You've got this really cute picture of these two boys and the dog, but unless you're going to go to that visual thing and go through hundreds of photographs in your system, how are you going to find this? You need to make sure, especially if you've got no idea what the call numbers of the object was. I don't remember what family it was from. It was the boys. They're cute. They have the dogs. Um, give it a little bit more metadata for archives and manuscripts. You don't have to transcribe every single record. Nobody has the time. If you have the time, you have hours, you have tons of volunteers, go for it. But not many people do. Start with the broadest cataloging and interpretation you can. And then as you have time, money, whatnot, you can get down and do that. Um, archives, having a collection level record for the archives, like we've talked a lot about the Finding Aid project the last year or two, um, to know that you have, oh, I went the wrong way, all of these that that relate to the French Indian War and transfer of wages and things like that, people will be able to open up those files and go through them and see what they want. Um, maybe that one document is what they're looking for, but maybe there's two or three other documents in that file that they'll find really interesting and really relevant to what they're looking for, and be able to use that as well. So actually making them have to look at two or three different documents, I think is actually good rather than being like, here's your one document. You never know what you're going to find in these other ones. I go back here. Oh, sorry for getting everybody dizzy with this. Photographs, a lot of the time you can have collection level records, but many deserve more object level metadata for these kind of things. That being said, if you've got, I will use postcards. Postcards are like, I have a love-hate with postcards. If you have a lot of postcards and you have a collection of, at Connecticut Historical, we have a lot of Hartford postcards, and a lot of them are duplicative. And a lot of them, especially if we got a lot of, a collection of them in together, we didn't necessarily have the time to digitize each and every single one. And we would group them together and say, group of Hartford photographs, including these things. We did a test run in our early days with our database of photograph collections with from the same thing. And we went through and found that grouping those and cataloging groups of the same types of photographs together works really well. Um, for instance, we had a guy who was a uh, led like a fife and drum corps. And there's a lot of pictures of him with the fife and drum corps, super interesting. But then we had one picture of him standing there in the uniform. Then we had another picture of him standing there in the uniform. And later on, there was another picture of him standing there in the uniform. We're like, you know what? These could all be one record and just say, images of Joe Smith in uniform with his fife and drum corps. And just do that one record with the metadata and the descriptions. And you can either attach one image with a please contact the repository for more information. Um, or you can always attach more than one digital file to a record. So it's kind of a time balance of how much you want to digitize and preserve and how much you just want to be able to get out there and get the most people able to find things. Um, with photographs, with any of these collections, honestly, they act as really good preservation copies because if you have some of these things copied and available, and out there, even in like a really base reference level photograph, you it saves a little bit of wear and tear on the object to put it out there. So you don't have somebody coming in saying like, well, I need to see all of this thing and I need to see this one very basic print from 1750 over and over and over again. I can see it online. And then if you get, actual researchers, things like that, and that really need to see the original, that's fine. But you don't have to pull it out every single time somebody wants to flip through all of the stuff. Very much so with manuscripts, archival manuscripts as well. Um, you can have them out there. So does that mean you need to digitize every single thing in your collection? Not necessarily. You kind of go back to this at the beginning. Where was I? When thinking about digitization projects, how do you choose what to digitize? Um, should this be digitized? May it be digitized? And can it be digitized? Um, is the content valuable? Is it super interesting? Does it relate to your organization's collecting policy? Is it rare or unique? This is where my love-hate of postcards comes in. Because, yeah, you have this great resource of a snapshot in time. Because it's really easy to date postcards, even if there's not actual correspondence or a stamp cancellation or something on the back. It's really easy to get a snapshot of a particular building or landmark or something like this. Um, is that as interesting right now at this point in time to work on this project first before digitizing this photo album that people took during the bicentennial in 1976 and have a lot of great images of parades and events and things like that. Right now, I would be super interested in that bicentennial album, considering what year we're in. Um, that would be my priority, and then save that. Well, we'll do the postcards later on. We'll get to some of that as we go. Uh, object-wise, is it a good representation of stuff you have in your collection? How much do you know about it? Is it a bad thing to put up like a what's it object and be like, we don't know what this is. Does anybody else have a good idea? That's fine. Do it. It's a lot of fun. And that's a take a snapshot with your phone and add it to your record. Um, May it be digitized is something to think about as well, whether you have permission as the rights holder to do it or if the item's in public domain. Just having physical possession of the object does not give you the legal right to reformat and make that item available. This is most relevant to things like books, because I've talked to quite a few groups over the years, not just Connecticut Collections people, but in general, saying, well, we have these books, we want to digitize them. You don't need to worry about that. There's other places out doing that kind of thing. Plus, it may not be in public domain yet. So you may not have the right to be able to do that. Is anybody going to come after you? Most likely not, but it's something to think about. There's a lot of copyright sites out there to be able to check on things like that. Um, Postcards, no one, I don't, you're fine. I don't think anyone's going to worry about it, even if it's not technically in the public domain and has a copyright on there. Don't quote me on that because I am not a legal expert, but some of the stuff is going to be fine. Uh, oh, more resources here for this. And then there's a should be digitized. I don't have the slide for that, but or the can it be digitized. Sometimes something is in such poor condition that to do I'm going to put it on my flatbed scanner and scan it. Sometimes you can't do it that way. I had a really great site, I don't know why I didn't copy it, of a really horrid looking negative that was all brittle and bubbly and everything. And the answer that the person came up with was to put it on a light table and then take a snapshot of it with a camera. Um, just to kind of record that it existed. To be able to come up with a high res perfect image of it is going to be difficult. So sometimes you have to work around things. Oh, I just thought of another slide I wanted to put in there too, but maybe I'll add it later for another presentation. Um, there's a couple, and again, if you want to look at these closer, let me know. Um, we're going to talk about FAGI a little bit, Federal Agencies Digital Guidelines Initiative, archival storage and material, and there was some great digitization webinar series from the Indiana Historical Society that I thought were really great and good to general reference back to. A lot of it is information folks already know, but sometimes it's good to give yourself a refresher. Um, talking about guidelines, digital initiatives, things like that. FAGI is like the highest level to go up and look into this kind of stuff to see what the resources are. This is very in depth, very technical in spots. It can be really helpful, but it does have drafts and image guidelines and all kinds of stuff like this on here. I thought I had another like short reference page and I couldn't find it, but I'll see if I can keep finding it in case everybody wants it. Some of the things to remember with digitization and things, it is all about consistency. As with anything with the database, come up with your set of rules of how you want to do things and um, stick with that and make sure that you're following those guidelines about image sizes, naming conventions. Those are two things that I really wanted to talk about today. When you're digitizing, and again, by digitizing, I mean photographs, phone snapshots, flatbed scanners, anything like that. One of the things you want to pay attention to is the file size that you're using, the standards you're scanning them to. High res for cameras, you can get huge cameras now, which are great. You need to balance that out with your storage capability and your time to work with the image. That includes time working with it on your computer. If you've got huge giant files that you're working with, it's going to slow down your computer. It's going to take forever to open them up. If you just are taking a picture of this coffee cup that someone gave you from anniversary in town, most likely that image is not going to be plastered on the side of a building where somebody's going to need to see it. You don't need a giant, giant image of that. A standard, what you decide your standard is, will work fine. Keeping that in mind as well. Years ago, still at Connecticut Historical, we were working on a project with the old State House in Hartford, and I was in charge of helping to scan. This is back when I was still in the graphics collection. I was in the charge of scanning some of the images and things to be able to put into the exhibit that we were doing at the old State House. And they were all the designers, all the exhibitions people at the museum are like, we need the biggest image you can get. We need something that's huge. It's going to be this on the size of a wall. It's going to be enormous. I'm like, oh my God, okay. So I'm trying to use older equipment, a computer that wasn't networked to the rest of the building. I was running around with a thumb drive, trying to put it on the right computer to do the right thing, trying to put it on a computer that had the brain power to do this thing. And one of the folks at the museum that was working on this project had me talk to the printer who was actually printing this out. And I said, well, I've got this 200 gigabyte file for you of this bird's eye view of Hartford. He's like, and I'm like, it's at like 600 DPI. It's huge. You'll love it. He's like, we actually don't need that. I'm like, what? I've been working on this so hard. He said, when you think about it, you're not printing out in that little tiny pixel something that's going to be seen across the room. And notice this next time you go somewhere that's got like a big wall size mural or graphic. When you're standing across the room from it, it looks great. It's pretty clear. Doesn't look pixely. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. So I always want to balance that out. It looks like pretty good. Walk right up to it and look at it on the wall, and you can really see like the individual blotches, and you almost can see the pixels and the spots and how they have it done. It is not printed out in that same kind of high resolution way that you were scanning it and presenting it. So I think most of my images for that ended up being in like 20 megabit size, even some of the ones that were really enormous, like on a wall or is really part of a really large graphic. Um, your goal is to only have to digitize something once. So you want to have the most versatile file that you can. Um, you don't want to have to go back and rescan it if you don't have to, because every time you scan or photograph, the light is going to do damage, more so with scanning. The light's going to do damage to it. So you want to try to not do that. So you want to have a generic, good size thing. One of the standards we had come up with that worked for years, we kind of based it, I think they kind of still do this, because a lot of the times I'll see files with these dimensions. We based our dimensions off of our old copy photographer coming in and taking a photo and making something print out at an 8x10 size image. Old black and white 8x10 was how we did copy photos back in the day. Um, we kind of stayed with that. So our usual standard was 300 DPI, dots per inch. And I would convert it to 10 inches by whatever the 10 inches on the longest side, which converts to 3,000 pixels on the longest side. I believe Fauci's has been saying for ages 600 DPI is what you should be doing. And a lot of the time that's just at the original size. So if you've got like a 4x6 postcard and scan it as a 600, that's fine. That'll be really give you a lot of flexibility, a lot of different things to do. It's going to be a pretty beefy file still, but it's not going to take over your computer, and your old computers in the office and your laptops that you've had for 10 years won't take, a day to open them. Some of those files that I was working on for the old State House before I had talked to the printer, I literally had to start opening the file and like walk away and come back a half hour later because it took that long to be able to get it to come through and open. Never mind trying to like turn it a little bit. So it's a combination of figuring out what file size and what dimensions are going to work best for you for things. Slides can be tricky when you're scanning that because a lot of the time it'll make the image, it'll say it's scanning it by like 1200 by 1200, and you come up with this image that looks this big. It's really high resolution, but attaching it to a record, sometimes it comes out oddly. I do have another graphic of that somewhere too, and I couldn't find it, so I have to look for that. Actually, I'm going to make a note for that on the graphic for slides. I end up, when I'm doing slides, I don't know if it's actually proper or not. When I'm doing slides, I blow it up as I'm scanning it. So I make it out to that 300, usually 3,000 pixels on the longest side size. And that's usually worked out fine. That's just my own workflow for that. The other really big thing is naming your files. So if you've noticed, as digital stuff comes out and digital cameras and digital phones and images and everything, the phone will very helpfully, or the camera will very helpfully name a file for you. And it'll be something like IMG0086, IMG0087, IMG0088. And those numbers will just keep going. So if you've got a bunch of images in your digital images in your records, and they're all numbered 0087, you have no idea what it is. And it's entirely possible that you can overwrite another image with that same file name, um, which is not ideal. You want to be able to keep your files, but sometimes the computer will get away with you and you'll be like, oh, let me move this over here. And it's like, do you want to overwrite? I'm like, yeah, I want to overwrite. Oh my God, what did I just do? Um, and just because you have using that one camera normally doesn't mean that somebody didn't use another camera ages ago and that number is going to repeat itself. You really do want to, if possible, um, name your image files the same name as the accession number on the object. So I don't know if I can find one in Fairfield really easily. I think because I will honestly go through and take a snapshot with my phone. And because I can, I will directly upload it to the database. And it does not give me the ability at that point in time to um, rename the file. But I also don't necessarily um, archive those images because it's a really quick one. Um, Sometimes I do and I change it, but it's not all the time. I think I had time to do some of these, so I may have some good images. Oh, I'm still working, that's why. Um, Probably not for this, because this is a picture taken in storage, but I know what the thing looks like. And apparently nowadays, if you have a designer working on your collections, um, they really want to see what the object looks like. One of our designers had us put the dress on a mannequin because they didn't believe us that we needed 4 feet of space around this giant hoop skirt dress, and they needed to see it. So now I know what this is. That's great. I probably did not name this file. You can see this in your records. You can see the specs on your image. When you're in a record, go down to media. And you should see this information right here. If you don't, for some reason, let me or Dana know, because during one of the system upgrades, they changed that information, but we can pop that right back in for you. So if you're not seeing anything that has all of that in it and it just has like a title or something like that, let us know as soon as you get that and we'll put that back to rights for you. But this is where you can see some of the information they've got for this. And see, I did not, it's not gonna let me highlight it. I did not change the file name for this. This is just what it was. So I attached that right from the camera. Um, Back to my results. I do have one that I did. This one might be one of our old images, actually. Okay, so here's a mix of both. So I've got one that was just an image number that nobody changed. So that's going to be not going to mean anything to anybody. But previously somebody had renamed it, and I know that this is 1983.4.33. So you can put that in there. There is a way to bulk add media to your records in the system, but you really do need to have those image files named by their number. Otherwise, they have no idea how to find the other one. If I tried to upload IMG 201, it's not necessarily going to know that because it doesn't have a way of differentiating that from anything else versus this. I can say match this up with the object ID and it'll find it. Um, I named these files. I differentiated them between if you're taking a picture of the same thing, but you've got multi views, you can just add something in the end of that to make it more, so you can differentiate it between its other record when you look at it. Just because of a previous, my predecessor at my last museum, she would always put DT for detail on the end of it. So she would have her main image and then she would say DT1, DT2, DT3. You could put front, back, verso, recto, things like that if it's useful. But now I know that this is this object, this is the first version. There's another one that's DT2. So I have another detail of this image. That's another thing of come up with a naming format for yourselves and make sure you stick with that and you keep consistent with it. Because now I know I can go and if I just see a page full of images, I can look through and know that I've got multi of the same thing. Um, let me see. I think that was kind of everything I wanted to talk about. I don't think I had any other, excuse me, while I spent through this. I don't think there was anything. Think about your file size, think about your standard, what's going to be the most useful for you to use and name your files. As I say that, not naming my phone files, but I try when I can. Um, the other thing is if you're ever moving those images out to something else, you're not going to be able to, again, have a way to match up those media files with your record unless you have that noted as that. When our system, you'll have the file will probably say something about it's linked to that record. It does in old PowerPoint files. There'll be a way that it's linked to that record, but just name your files. I think that's the easiest. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover, and I blew through that really quickly. So hopefully, if that was a lot, you can go back and watch this. Always feel free to send questions to us. Do you guys have any questions about all of that? Or questions about anything else with the system at this point in time? I will say while you're thinking and trying to digest all that, adding new images to this is super easy. You can see how many I've got at this one. If any of you have not done it yet, add representation. And all you have to do is pretend I have another window open on the other side of the screen, is just select the images you want and click and drag them into this upload media box. Wait for it to say that all those images are there because you can do more than one at a time. Um, if you've got large files, it will take a while for them to upload and get to that point. So just wait for it to say, I've got 3 images uploaded or something like that, or 3 images ready. Then you can enter your information if you want, and then click save, and you'll see them there, and they'll show up something like this. For the extra metadata here, I honestly haven't started filling that out until last year, a lot of the time, maybe the year before. Just because I'm the only one that works on the system, so I know what it is, but I'm trying to be more conscientious about any of my successors when the day comes. And I'll put notes here, snapshot and storage, do not reproduce, or high resolution image, good for reproduction. Do always click the transcribe to no, unless you have a document that you want to have show up as transcribed on the public portal. There is not a way to set this automatically to no. Why? I don't want to know, but yeah, I can't set this to no. So you always have to go in and change that transcribe to no, especially for objects. And the representation label is just what the image is. So I would just for this one put like Pocket Watch, Pocket Watch open. I should go back and do these honestly. Back of Pocket Watch, something like that. All of that information people will find in the description of the record in it. But this is just a quickie kind of thing that shows up, which is handy. Yeah, okay. Any questions from anybody? I'm gonna actually stop recording.